Hey everyone, and welcome to our series looking at the history of Necromunda. In our first episode, we saw how this planet was formed from the rubble of an interstellar empire and born into the desolate ash waste, scarred and broken by centuries of war that we know today. In this second episode, we're going to be looking at a time known as the Lawless Age, where gangs vie for power in a broken world that continues to fight the Imperium's desire for rule and order, and how one man rises to the top to take control of both. So, as with last time, remember, this history is always dusted with some Imperial truth, so you take it how you will, and you build the story how you want, but for now, I'm going to present it to you how I found it. So I hope you enjoy this second episode on the history of Necromunda. Roll the tape. Now, even though that period of grand epic space battles was over, it was not such an easy transition to peace on the surface. As even though the Iron Lords, the previous leaders of the Rebellious continuity, had been defeated by the Imperium, the peoples of Necromunda were not quite so convinced by the new management. And it took nearly 200 years for this imperial planetary governors to control and combat the rebellious population into some form of order. During this struggle, the first gangs were formed, elevating their leaders to the positions of kings, warlords of this wasted earth. They fought one another for territory and power amongst the many hives that dotted this planet, until each and every one was under their control. Yet it wasn't until 631 M31, when these warlords failed to pay their masters back on Terra their imperial tithe, the Emperor's forces returned to exact order to the world once again. Many of these gang kings were made examples of as punishment, with their corpses hung from the spires above, as the rebellious peoples of many hives were decimated, literally decimated, by the imperial forces. And it wasn't until 621 M31 the Imperial Fist decided they needed to further exact their dominion over the hive world in the form of the Spear of Dawn, creating a permanent presence of Space Marines to enact punishments and impose imperial edicts upon the world of Necromunda. And for another millennia, a new form of gang kings rise faster they can fall, yet smart enough to continue to pay their tithes and not spurn the wrath of their imperial masters. And again, they continue to seek dominion over one hive or another, trying to turn their bloodlines into some form of hereditary rule for one generation to pass and an ally or offspring to turn coats and strike at them from their weak thrones. And the names of these kings and queens are lost before a generation passes. I mean, their names are merely added to the winds that blow upon the ash of the wastelands, to be forgotten forevermore. I basically see this period as a veritable maze of Shakespearean tragedy and Machiavellian plots, all set against the backdrop of a hive world born under fire. I mean, what a great time to choose as a setting for a campaign. No one at the top, and it's ripe for the taking. I think that could be really fun. But Necromunda never really changes, and in 514 M33, these warring factions turn their blades away from one another and set them all against the Imperium. A dozen gang leaders claiming to be descendants of the Iron Lords of the Rebellious continuity fight together for complete control over the world of Necromunda, each one proclaiming to the Imperium that they are the ultimate voice of rulership for the world. And yet again, the Imperium isn't one for bowing down to any sort of demand, and so the Imperial Fists are ordered to exact a punishment on these peoples, and let's just say it doesn't go very well for these gang leaders. This time the spires were cut off immediately from the rest of the hive, sealing the ruling elite within the grand palaces, lofty halls and blossoming gardens of wealth that were once their home and would now become their tombs. The Imperial Fist waded through the spire, leaving the bodies of the dead in their wake, the screams emanating down into the hive below as the blood dripped from the ceilings above. Thus, the Imperium left the rule of the city to the underhive gangs below, however this time under the watchful eye of the Adeptus Arbites. I think I said that right. Now, this Iron Lord's legacy never really disappears. It's always used as a banner of rebellion against any antagonist or leader that the people want to try and overthrow or fight against. Yet, in the 34th millennium, we can say that it dissipates greatly thanks to a one Martek Helm'ayr. Martek swears an oath to the Imperial Fist, stating that if he is given total control over the whole of Necromunda, he will impose Imperial order within a century. And in defeating the last of the Iron Lord's legacy, a powerful gang leader known as Treyea Siberia, now remember that name because Siberia will come up again, he stabilizes Imperial rule in 085 M34. From now on, we move into a new period of Necromunda's history. Helm'ayr and his descendants continue to rule for the next 7,000 years, which is extremely impressive. But this time is not without its struggles, and some key events that will shape the houses and gangs we know today, and sends ripples out that will cascade throughout the centuries and millennia to come. So from now on, we're going to move through each millennia by millennia, outlining these key events and moments that will shape Necromunda into the world we know today. M34. In 533, Martek Helm'ayr sets his sights on a world untouched by Imperial rule, that of the barren Ash Wastes. This land of wasters, scavies, mutants and beasts is treacherous at the best of times, yet at this time these disparate and nomadic peoples had eventually united under the rule of a powerful warlord said to be the descendant of Siberia herself. Told you that name would come up again. Either way, these peoples waged an embittered war on the roads between the hives, hijacking trade caravans, capturing gangers and destroying the roads themselves. With this, Helm'ayr sent gangs of outriders and airships to respond to this threat, and with this immense power, they scattered the once united tribes back into nomadic wastes that they were before. But no sign of this Siberia. And like all cartoon comic baddies, I'm sure if they don't die and they disappear, they're going to turn up again. These ash wastes, however, become a haven for anyone who spurns the wrath of Helm'ayr. Rival factions, those who try to usurp his throne, or anyone who poses a threat to the Imperium. And these powerful peoples form what would become the nomadic tribes and their wasteland settlements that still exist in the Necromunda setting today. Also in this age, a number of opportunists, idealists, crooks and cults take root in a world rich with the desperate and broken. One such that appears to last is the Immortal cult. They're a group of weirds and witches, aka psykers, who seek to bring about this psychic awakening in all of humankind. This one of all the others will play a part in what will become Necromunda's fate in the millennia to follow. M35. Not much is recorded, but this millennia cements the forging of the clans, where through division brought between the noble clans and the house clans of Hive Primus, a treaty of sorts is formed, where the houses of Uranta, Waiter, Gorshed, Mung and Yulanti are officially recognised and given nobility, whilst Owar, Hasbel, Yungar, Avarist and Orland are given dominion over the various industries of the Hive. This pact is then replicated across the many other hives of Necromunda. Of these houses, not many still survive today. However, those that do, be wary, as you should always be of old dogs in a game where the players die young. M36. This millennia finds the last true descendant of Martek Helm'ayr, one Jarl Helm'or, born a sick, frail and twisted creature, who was kept alive in a grim dark version of a hypostasis chamber, purely so that his genes can be harvested, mixed with that of the greatest and strongest of the hive, so as to be able to seed his future descendants, upon which the plug is pulled and he is left to die. His use succeeded. This unnatural line sparks the fires of rebellion in Necromunda once again, and as years after the birth of the first vat-bred Helm'ayr, an alliance of nobles strikes in one swift move with augmented assassins to tear down the ruling house. Yet Yar is not so blind, and they are met with the meanest and strongest gangers he can muster. The night is ended with the blood of hundreds, and the house of Helm'ayr still atop the pile of dead. With this, the Oath Nobilis is writ, to inscribe into law allegiance to the Pax Imperium on fate of open war. Thousands sign this sacred object, and it is sealed in the vaults of Hive Primus to this day. Yet, even though they do not fight with Helm'ayr or the Imperium, they continue to fight amongst one another in what is known as the First Great Clan Wars. This war is mainly fought over the hive's industries. In this, the houses rise and fall, Haspel is destroyed, while Ulwar is split into Ulweir and Ulrak. Sounds a little bit like something that's coming later. Helm'ayr and the Imperium is unstirred, as so long as taxes and times are met, they can fight as much as they wish. I mean, the less time they are looking above or to the stars beyond, the better, to be honest. And another house finds its end in this millennia, yet in a very Necromunda kind of way. The House of MUNG was deteriorating, and as such, the last of its patriarchs seal their brains in stasis phases to be reborn later in the hope of a resurgence of the clan to come. These vases are hidden in secret vaults around the hive for this glorious day of revival. However, no one really cares about the Mungs and isn't really bothered about reviving them. Yet these brains have found another use. These Mung vases are searched out for as a form of delicacy for the haughtier establishments of Hive Primus. Yeah, I don't quite know what to do with that information, but I felt like I needed to share it with you. And trailing off the end of this millennium, there is this very minor event known as the Dark Orb. Now, in the book, it's just a paragraph about this big, and I could have passed it by, but there was something about it that spoke to what I was talking about in the first episode. As I said, the story of Necromunda explains and provides us how the world evolved into the skirmish, cyberpunk, grim dark future that we know today. But it also explains the wider universe of the 41st millennium. This sense of hopelessness, despair, and horrific war. But how that affects the peoples, the everyday peoples. This event shows me what that must be like. You know, when you see people talk about the 41st millennium, you hear about the trudging existence of living in a fascist regime, or the endless meat grinder of the Imperium of man's war machine, where billions of people are chucked to the front line just to die and die over and over again. Or maybe the epic space battles of space marines sent to fight demonic beings from the warp, or aliens who shoot these horrific guns that have flesh-eating bullets in them. I mean, yes, those are horrific. But I turn to those books by Dan Abnett, The World of the Everyday Human. How that at every corner you could be presented by your worst nightmare wrought real. A demon host could be there in the dark. You could find a shard of a material which is some sort of drug that gives you visions of the horrific world beyond the realms of reality. Your world could be decimated by an event in seconds. And as such, I think when this dark orb appears, which is when a weird solar system passes by Necromunda and it just hangs in the air as a black orb in the sky, people just give in. People just expect that this is the end times, because it fucking could be. Any moment it could be the end of time. And I don't know, to me it just expressed what it's like to live in the horrific and terrifying worlds of the 41st millennium. Which means if you want to get into the essence of this game, here it is. Because it's not cyberpunk. It's not corporate America turned up to 11. It's not punk. I mean, it's death metal fed through a meat grinder. It's not a world of funky bionic arm upgrades or crazy laser weapons. It's anti-technology where human intelligence is force-fed into a symbiosis with machinery. I mean, next time you want to make your games, make them crazy, make them extreme, make them over the top, because that's what Games Workshop originally intended this to be. Because it's so much fun, it's so cool, and I just want us to inject that raw edge once again, because it's what makes this game incredible. Anyway, I digress, but I think that's what I want to end our second episode on, that thought. Just take that thought with you for the rest of the week. Put some comments down on some crazy ideas maybe you've had for something in Necromunda, because I just want more of it. Anyway, we will return next time where we see what happens in the millennia leading up to the time we know today. So if you want to continue on this journey with me, press subscribe and hit that little bell so you'll hear a notification the next time an episode comes up. And in the meantime, have some fun and you stay safe in the Underhive. Bye everybody.